Eeny, miny, mo. We need gold. Come on, let's go. Make it snappy.
He was the loudest laugh in the room, the chaos in every scene, and the reason millions tuned in. But what most people never saw was what was happening behind the camera as everything slowly started to change. In this video, we look at the final moments of Curly Howard's time on screen and why that scene feels so different when you know the full story behind it. Join us as we uncover what really happened. The first steps. Curly Howard, born Jerome Lester Horwitz on October 20th, 1903 in Brooklyn, did not grow up planning to become a comedy legend. He came from a close-knit Jewish family, where entertainment was already part of life thanks to his older brothers, Mo Howard and Shemp Howard. Both Mo and Shemp had already stepped into the world of vaudeville and comedy, building a path that Curly would later follow, even if he didn't expect to. Before fame, Curly's life was far from glamorous. He worked a series of small, ordinary jobs just to get by. He spent time as a ballroom floor cleaner and even tried his hand at singing in small clubs. These jobs didn't bring him recognition, but they did shape his personality. He was known to be quiet, shy, and kind off stage. At that point, there was no clear sign that he would one day become one of the most recognizable faces in comedy. Unlike many performers of his time, Curly had no formal training in acting or comedy. He never studied timing or technique in a classroom. What he had instead was natural instinct. He understood what made people laugh without needing to break it down. His humor came from his reactions, his movements, and the way he carried himself. It felt real, not practiced. Everything changed in 1932 when Shemp decided to leave the Three Stooges. The group suddenly needed a replacement, and Mo made the unexpected choice to bring in his younger brother. Curly wasn't the obvious pick, but he had something different. He had a raw energy that couldn't be taught. To step into the role, Curly made a bold change. He shaved off his thick, curly hair, creating the look that would define him forever. That single decision helped shape his identity. The bald head, combined with his expressive face, made him instantly stand out. It also earned him the nickname Curly, which stuck for the rest of his life. At first, Curly was nervous about performing. He was stepping into an established act with big expectations. But that nervousness didn't last long. The moment he started performing, audiences connected with him right away. There was something honest about his style. He didn't try to act like anyone else. He quickly developed the traits that made him unforgettable. His high-pitched voice became one of his trademarks, adding a unique sound to every scene. His physical comedy was wild and unpredictable. He moved in ways that felt chaotic, but still controlled enough to land perfectly. On top of that, he brought a sense of childlike innocence to his character. He wasn't just funny, he was likable. These qualities helped Curly rise fast. While Mo and Larry were important parts of the act, it was Curly who often grabbed the most attention. His energy filled the screen, and his presence made every moment more exciting. And just as quickly as he rose, something began to shift behind the scenes. His greatest work. Curly Howard's greatest work came during his years with the Three Stooges from 1934 to 1946, a period where he appeared in nearly 100 short films. These weren't long movies, but they left a strong impact. In each one, Curly brought a kind of energy that made the trio stand out from other comedy acts of the time. While Mo Howard played the strict leader and Larry Fine acted as the confused middleman, Curly became the emotional and comedic center. He was the one audiences connected with the most. One of the earliest examples of his brilliance can be seen in Men in Black. This short film, set in a hospital, was filled with chaos from start to finish. Curly's performance stood out, because of how naturally he reacted to everything around him. His confusion, his panic, and his exaggerated movements made even simple scenes feel alive. The film was so well received that it earned an Academy Award nomination, which was rare for a short comedy at the time. In A Plumbing We Will Go, Curley showed just how skilled he was with physical comedy. The entire story revolves around plumbing problems, but it is Curley's interaction with tools and pipes that makes it memorable. He didn't just follow a script. He turned everyday objects into sources of laughter through his movements and reactions. His ability to create humor out of simple situations made this short one of the most loved by fans. Another standout is An Ache in Every Steak. In this film, Curley plays an ice delivery man, and what starts as a simple task quickly turns into a complete disaster. The humor builds step by step, with each mistake leading to a bigger problem. Curley's expressions and timing are key here. He reacts in ways that feel unexpected, keeping the audience engaged the entire time. By the time Microphones was released, Curley had mastered his craft. In this short, he pretends to be a trained opera singer, creating humor through contrast and exaggeration. His ability to shift into a completely different kind of character showed how flexible he was as a performer. He could be loud and chaotic in one moment and controlled in the next. One of Curley's biggest strengths was his improvisation. He didn't rely only on written lines. Many of his best moments came from quick reactions and spontaneous ideas. This made his performances feel fresh and unpredictable. Audiences never knew exactly what he would do next, and that kept them watching closely. Curley also stood out because of how he used sound. Unlike many comedians who came from the silent film era, he made full use of his voice. His high-pitched tone, strange sounds, and unique way of speaking added another layer to his comedy. It made his performance more complete and easier to remember. His sense of timing and rhythm played a big role too. He knew when to pause, when to react, and when to go all in. This control helped him guide the audience's attention without them even realizing it. In the end, it was these qualities that made Curley the face people remembered. He wasn't just part of the act. He was the moment everyone waited for. But behind all that laughter, the pressure was starting to build. The Golden Age. The Golden Age of Curly Howard took place from the mid-1930s to the early 1940s, when he was at the height of his powers and fully in control of his craft. During these years, the Three Stooges were producing short films at a fast pace under Columbia Pictures. The studio system at the time demanded constant output, and the Stooges were expected to deliver multiple films every year. This meant long hours, repeated takes, and very little rest between projects. Despite the pressure, Curley delivered performance after performance that felt fresh and full of energy. The trio had a clear dynamic that made their comedy work so well. Mo Howard played the strict authority figure who tried to keep everything under control. Larry Fine acted as the middle ground, often confused, but trying to help. Curley, however, was the chaos. He brought unpredictable energy into every scene, often turning simple situations into complete disorder. Curley's signature routines became a big part of this era. His famous nuke nuke laugh was instantly recognizable. He also used physical movements that audiences came to expect and love, like spinning on the floor, barking like a dog, and reacting in exaggerated ways to even the smallest problems. These weren't random actions. They were carefully timed and delivered in a way that made each scene feel alive and engaging. Some of the most memorable shorts came from this period. In Disorder in the Court, the trio creates chaos inside a courtroom, with Curley's reactions driving many of the funniest moments. In We Want Our Mummy, the setting shifts to an ancient tomb. but the humor remains fast and physical, with Curley leading the confusion. Then there's Dizzy Doctors, where the trio pretends to be doctors, and Curley's unpredictable behavior keeps the story moving from one problem to the next. Audiences couldn't get enough of him during these years. Children copied his voice and movements, while adults looked forward to each new release. His style became part of popular culture, and his presence helped the Stooges stand out in a crowded entertainment world. Curley wasn't just part of the act, he was the main reason many people showed up to watch. However, behind the scenes, things were not as easy as they looked. The demanding schedule began to take a toll on Curley's body. The physical nature of his comedy required constant movement, falls, and fast reactions. Over time, this became harder to maintain. Even though he continued to perform with the same level of energy on screen, those close to him started noticing small changes. There were early signs that something wasn't right. His timing was not always as sharp as before. His movements began to slow slightly, and his reactions were sometimes delayed. These changes were subtle at first, and many viewers didn't notice them. The studio, focused on keeping production going, did not step in to slow things down or give him time to recover. Curley kept pushing forward, giving everything he had to each performance, even as his body started to struggle. On screen, he still looked like the same energetic performer. Off-screen, the strain was becoming harder to hide. And soon, those small warning signs would turn into something much more serious. His troubled marriages. While Curly Howard made millions of people laugh on screen, his personal life told a very different story. The man who looked full of joy in films often struggled with instability and sadness behind the scenes. His relationships, especially his marriages, showed a pattern of hope followed by disappointment. He wanted love and connection, but he found it difficult to hold on to them. Curly was married 4 times, and each relationship reflected a different stage of his life. His first marriage was to Julia Rosenthal in 1930. It was a quick and impulsive decision. At the time, Curly was still finding his place in life, and the marriage didn't last long. It was annulled within months. This early experience set the tone for what would become a pattern of unstable relationships. In 1937, he married Elaine Ackerman. This was one of the more stable periods in his personal life. The couple had a daughter, Marilyn, which brought Curly a sense of happiness and responsibility. For a while, it seemed like he had found balance between his career and his home life. However, the demands of his work, combined with his growing health issues and drinking habits, slowly began to affect the relationship. Over time, the stress became too much, and the marriage ended in divorce. His third marriage, to Marion Buxbaum in 1945, was perhaps the most troubled. It started quickly and ended even faster. Within just a few months, the relationship broke down completely. The split was not quiet. It became public and messy, drawing attention from the media. Newspapers covered the arguments and accusations, turning Curly's private struggles into public entertainment. This was a difficult time for him, as he was already dealing with emotional stress and declining health. By the time he married Valerie Newman, things were very different. This was during the final years of his life, when his health had already begun to fail. Valerie was not just a partner, but also a caretaker. She stayed by his side as he went through some of his most difficult moments. Unlike his earlier marriages, this relationship was quieter and more focused on support and care. One of the biggest challenges Curly faced in his relationships was his emotional vulnerability. He deeply wanted affection and stability, but he struggled to maintain it. Fame added pressure to his life. Long working hours, constant public attention, and the need to always perform made it hard for him to focus on his personal relationships. On top of that, his reliance on alcohol made things worse. It affected his behavior and made conflicts harder to resolve. The media also played a role in increasing his struggles. During his divorces, especially the one with Marion Buxbaum, his private life was exposed in a way that made things even more painful. Instead of dealing with issues quietly, he had to face public judgment and embarrassment. Over time, these repeated failures in his personal life led to growing loneliness. Even though he was surrounded by people in his professional world, he often felt alone. This emotional decline started to affect other areas of his life, including his health and performance. His heartbreak didn't stay in his personal life. It slowly became part of the struggles he faced off-screen. And as his personal life began to fall apart, his health was about to take an even more serious turn. Curley's dark days. By the early 1940s, small but worrying changes began to appear in Curley Howard. On screen, he still made people laugh, but his timing was not as sharp as it used to be. His reactions came a little slower, and his physical movements were not as precise. For a performer whose comedy depended on speed and control, even small changes mattered. At first, these signs were easy to miss, but they became more noticeable over time. Behind the scenes, Curley's health was already in trouble. He was dealing with high blood pressure and obesity, both of which made his condition more serious. His lifestyle made things worse. He drank heavily, smoked often, and did not take proper care of his body. These habits, combined with the physical demands of his work, started to wear him down. He kept going, but his body was struggling to keep up. The emotional toll was just as heavy. Curley was not just tired physically, he was also dealing with anxiety, depression, and burnout. The pressure of constant filming, along with personal problems in his life, made it hard for him to find balance. Even though he continued to perform, those close to him could see that something was wrong. On set, the changes became harder to ignore. There were moments when he seemed confused or slower to react. Scenes that once came easily now required more effort. His co-stars began to notice, especially his brother, Mo Howard. Mo had worked with Curley for years and understood his rhythm better than anyone. Seeing those changes was difficult for him. He knew that Curley was not performing at his usual level, but there was little he could do to stop what was happening. In 1945, things took a serious turn. Curley suffered a minor stroke while filming. It shocked everyone on set. Even though he managed to return to work for a short time, the damage had already been done. After the stroke, his speech became slurred, making it harder for him to deliver his lines. His coordination also suffered, which made physical comedy much more difficult. He tried to continue working, but it was clear that he was not the same. The energy that once defined him was fading. His movements were slower, and his confidence began to drop. For someone who had built his entire career on performance, this was a painful change. By 1946, the situation could not continue. Curley was forced to step away from the Three Stooges, and his brother Shemp Howard returned to take his place. This was more than just a professional change. For Curley, it was a personal loss. Being part of the group was a major part of his identity, and losing that role affected him deeply. The psychological impact was strong. He went from being the center of attention to being away from the spotlight. The laughter, the cameras, and the busy sets were suddenly gone. In their place was quiet and isolation. He spent more time away from the public, dealing with his condition and the changes in his life. Curley's world had shifted in a way he could not control, and it left him facing a very different reality than the one he once knew. And soon, everything would come to a sudden and heartbreaking stop on set. the real reason he collapsed. The collapse of Curley Howard was not caused by one single moment. It was the result of many problems building up over time. From the outside, it looked sudden, but in reality, his body had been struggling for years before it finally gave out. One of the biggest factors was his lifestyle. Curley was known for heavy drinking, and over time, it became a serious habit. He also had a poor diet and did not focus on his health. On top of that, he rarely received proper medical care. Even when signs of illness started to show, they were not fully treated. These choices slowly weakened his body and made him more vulnerable to serious conditions like high blood pressure and strokes. At the same time, the demands of working in The Three Stooges added more pressure. The filming schedule was intense. The group was expected to produce multiple short films every year, often with very little time to rest between shoots. This meant long days on set and very little recovery time. Curley was constantly pushing his body to perform, even when he was already exhausted. The emotional side of his life also played a big role. His failed marriages left him feeling unstable and alone. He dealt with constant stress, both from his personal life and his career. Deep down, Curley also struggled with insecurity. Even though he was loved by audiences, he often doubted himself. These feelings added to the pressure he was already facing, making it harder for him to cope. There is also evidence that Curley may have suffered from earlier, undiagnosed strokes before the major one that ended his career. These smaller strokes could have affected his health without being fully noticed at the time. Without proper treatment, they likely made his condition worse over time. Another major factor was the physical nature of his comedy. Curley's style relied on movement, falls, and constant action. He threw himself into every scene, often hitting the ground, bumping into objects, and reacting with full force. This level of physical effort put a lot of strain on his body. Day after day, this kind of work added stress that slowly wore him down. Even as his condition got worse, Curley refused to step away. He cared deeply about his work and his audience. He wanted to keep performing, even when it became clear that his health was declining. This determination, while admirable, also meant that he continued working when he should have been resting. The studio also played a role in what happened. Columbia Pictures focused on keeping production going. Curley was popular, and audiences expected to see him. Instead of slowing things down or giving him time to recover, the work continued. The needs of the industry and the expectations of the audience were placed ahead of his health. In the end, Curley's collapse was not caused by one event. It was the result of years of pressure, poor health habits, emotional stress, and constant physical strain. Each factor added to the next until his body could no longer handle it. And when that breaking point finally came, it happened in front of the cameras in a moment no one could forget. The final scene. The moment that truly marked the end for Curley Howard came during the filming of Half-Wit's Holiday. By this point in 1946, his health had already been declining, but he was still trying to perform. The production moved forward as usual, even though those around him could see that he was not in the same condition as before. During filming, Curley's weakened state became more noticeable. He was still present in the scenes, but the difference in his performance was clear. His reactions were slower than what audiences were used to. The quick timing that once defined his comedy was no longer as sharp. There were moments where he seemed slightly out of sync with what was happening around him. His movements lacked the same control and energy that had made him famous. In the final completed footage, these changes are easy to spot. Curley appears quieter and less expressive. His usual fast reactions are replaced with delayed responses. There are small signs of confusion in his face, as if he is trying to keep up with the scene but struggling to do so. For viewers who are familiar with his earlier work, the difference stands out immediately. One of the most talked about parts of this scene is what didn't happen. There is a moment where Curley is expected to deliver a line, something that would normally lead into one of his signature comedic reactions. Instead, the scene cuts before he can say anything. The interruption feels sudden. His usual punchline energy is missing, leaving the moment unfinished. It creates a strange pause that feels out of place. This is one of the reasons why the scene feels so unsettling to watch today. People who know Curley's earlier performances remember how fast, loud, and full of life he used to be. Seeing him in this condition creates a strong contrast. It is not just about the scene or crowd itself, but about what it represents. Viewers are aware of what was happening to him at the time, and that knowledge adds emotional weight to every second. Behind the scenes, the situation was even more serious. Shortly after filming, Curley collapsed. He had suffered a massive stroke on set. This was not just another health issue. It was the moment that ended his career. The man who had once carried entire scenes with his energy could no longer perform. Looking back, this final scene has taken on a deeper meaning. It was not planned to be his goodbye, but it became one. There was no big farewell or final speech. Instead, his last moments on screen are quiet, incomplete, and filled with signs of struggle. That is what makes it so hard to watch. For many fans, this scene feels different from the rest of his work. It is not just comedy. It is a glimpse into the end of a performer's journey. It shows a side of Curley that audiences were never meant to see. And after that moment, his life moved into its most difficult and painful chapter. The tormented final years. After the devastating stroke in 1946, life changed completely for Curley Howard. The man who once moved with non-stop energy could no longer perform the way he used to. The immediate aftermath was serious. He was taken off set and given medical care, but the damage was severe. It quickly became clear that he would not be able to return to his role in the Three Stooges. His removal from the group was not just a professional decision. It marked the end of the life he had known for years. Performing had been a huge part of who he was. Losing that connection to the stage and the camera was deeply painful. His brother, Shemp Howard, stepped in to take his place. But for Curley, the absence of that work left a lasting emotional impact. Physically, his condition continued to decline. One of the most noticeable effects was his speech. It became slurred and difficult to understand. Simple conversations were no longer easy for him. His mobility was also limited. He struggled with basic movements, and tasks that once felt natural now required effort and assistance. The fast, controlled physical comedy that defined his career was no longer possible. There was one brief attempt to bring him back on screen in a small cameo. The idea was to give fans a chance to see him again. However, his condition made it clear that he could not perform as he once did. The appearance was limited, and it only highlighted how much had changed. It was a quiet reminder that his time as a performer had come to an end. As the years went on, Curley spent much of his time in hospitals and care facilities. His health required constant attention, and he could not live independently. During this time, he became more dependent on others for daily care. His wife, Valerie Newman, played a key role in supporting him. She stayed by his side and helped manage his needs during these difficult years. Unfortunately, his condition did not improve. He suffered additional strokes, each one making his situation worse. His physical strength continued to fade, and his ability to communicate became more limited. Over time, he became more isolated from the public. The man who had once been in front of audiences was now living away from the spotlight. This isolation added to the emotional weight of his final years. He was no longer part of the fast-paced world he had once thrived in. Instead, his days were quieter and focused on managing his health. Those who visited him saw a very different person from the one they remembered on screen. On January 18, 1952, Curley Howard passed away at the age of 48. The cause of death was a cerebral hemorrhage linked to his long-term health problems, including high blood pressure and the effects of multiple strokes. His passing was quiet, far removed from the energy and laughter that had once defined his life. If you want to see more stories like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next one.